You know, in this job, you deal with a lot of injustice, and that usually occurs at the hands of self-interested politicians. But rarely does such a case hit the United Nations. But the UN Human Rights Committee has activated an investigation into complaints by Sydney businessman Charif Kazal that his human rights have been violated by the New South Wales anti-corruption watchdog. 8 years after he was labelled corrupt by New South Wales ICAC but never charged, the UN has asked the federal government to respond to complaints regarding Mr Kazal's right to the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. Now, it's understood to be the first time such an action has been taken up by the United Nations over the undermining of the presumption of innocence in this country. And this is on a man who the ICAC inspector says has no case to answer. Charif Kazal joins me now in our studio. Charif, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks for inviting me, Chris. Good evening.
I can't imagine what you've been through in that such a long time, but this is quite a step to take. To go to the United Nations, it's almost something that campaigners in corrupt third world countries would go to. Why did you take the step?
I've been fighting this injustice for a very long time. I've had every step of the way. I've taken every opportunity to try to correct the wrong that happened to me and my family at the hands of the Independent Commission Against Corruption in New South Wales. I've written to the Parliamentary Committee well before the Margaret Cunneen fiasco, warning them about the breach of the Commission and its overreaching on private citizens. As such, I'm one. They've basically rebuffed me. They said they were satisfied with the provisions that were in place.
And yet the inspector that oversees ICAC's decisions and their operation has cleared your name in Parliament, but that doesn't make it official, does it?
Well, not really, unless the Parliament of New South Wales and the Premier of New South Wales take real action, real leadership on dealing with this mess and ensuring citizens like myself who are caught up in this mess are being given the opportunity to clear their names.
Officially exonerated is what you want.
Officially exonerated. An apology. I deserve an apology. Me and my entire family, we've been put up with a lot of rubbish for the last 8 years.
OK, let's before we talk about the premiers, and I want to get to this, you're in this growing band of wronged former suspects, aren't you? I think of Margaret Cunneen, who had to go to the High Court. I think of Liberal MP Mike Gallagher, who only recently the inspector exonerated in the Parliament, but again, the same situation, not officially exonerated by the Parliament. Why is it that ICAC have so many former suspects that end up being cleared in a very unofficial way, but they won't go that one step further, will they?
Well, accountability is a very important issue.
But are they too aggressive?
Extremely aggressive. They work outside the justice system, outside the rule of law, outside the presumption of innocence. It's like they're a law to themselves. This is not what your listeners, people outside, Australian citizens, they don't expect to be treated like this. Everyone must be afforded the presumption of innocence. You are innocent until proven guilty.
OK, you're not a state government official, are you? You're not a bureaucrat?
I'm a private citizen.
OK, and ICAC was supposed to be about corruption of state officials.
Absolutely.
OK, so in brief, what did they think they had on you, which has since proven to be wrong?
It's the contrary, Chris. What they had to confirm, they had nothing on me, but continue to pursue me so they can destroy my name and reputation, so they can help Roderick David, who they brought in as a star witness, whom I had 2 legal cases against him for fraud and embezzlement and for breach of fiduciary duty, which has been proven by a Cayman court. He has breached his fiduciary duty by stealing my shares in a multi-million-dollar company which controlled the waste facility at Eastern Creek.
So they thought that this man that you had court cases on allegations of fraud, they thought he was a reliable witness?
Absolutely. And they had evidence that there were no wrongdoing, there were no favours and there were no benefits. Exculpatory evidence. They had a statement from an ex-official of the Foreshore Authority, Mr Paul Nielsen. They didn't even provide it to my lawyers.
OK, we don't need to go through the details of that because the inspector has done that over and above ICAC and has cleared you. I want to play for you what you got from the Premier, the former Premier in New South Wales, Mike Baird, because it was he, back in February 2016, that was quite favourable. Well, it seemed that way anyway. Have a listen to Mike Baird.
What ICAC has done, I mean, they must stand to account for.
Well, I met Mr. Baird, and he referred me to Mr. Nicholson, to the acting inspector of ICAC. I'm a local constituent in his area. And due to this referral, the inspector issued a report to Parliament after extensive and exhaustive investigation process into Operation Vesta. This report has been in Parliament since June 2018. It's the inaction of the Parliamentary Committee and the members of Parliament who sits on that committee and the Premier as a leader of this great state, New South Wales, by doing nothing that has put me in this predicament.
OK, and they even went as far as to put together a validation act that would therefore make it impossible for those who've been wronged by ICAC to claim any recompense from the government. Is that right?
That's correct. And this retrospective legislation is nothing but a cover-up legislation.
OK.
So they can cover up the mistakes of ICAC without affording a due
And that
process.
was the reaction you got after Mike Baird said that. Let's go to Gladys Berejiklian. She was speaking with Alan Jones only recently on this subject.
You've had this for months. It's only a decision. I mean, I'm saying to you, firstly then, I'll come with you. Will you meet with Mr Kazal? I mean, this is one of your citizens. How would you like this to be your mum or dad?
Look, I certainly appreciate it when people, and I know others who've been through...
But it's not good enough to appreciate it. You've got to do something about it, right?
I understand, and I undertook the last time we spoke to get advice on these matters, and I've requested that. And
it's taken a while.
I appreciate
Come on.
Let me sum all of this up. Because ICAC are bungling so many investigations, the state government in New South Wales is dead set scared of having to pay off people like yourself.
Absolutely. They're dead scared of standing up for justice. They are hiding from the truth. They are not dealing with the issue as a progressive leaders would do. Stand up, address the mess, and move on. All I'm asking for is a simple apology to me and my family, we are hard-working people. We've done nothing wrong, but to be put in this predicament and to continue to fight for justice for 8 years. Just imagine the innocent children in my family, they had to put up with this mess and the reputational damage that we had to endure.
So what about business? What about your life?
Business, life, emotional, financial. I mean, the list goes on.
And so what we need, let's cut to the chase here. What we need is someone to stand up in the Parliament with guts and conviction to say, we need an exoneration avenue emerging from failed investigations by ICAC. I'm putting it in layman's terms. Am I right?
You're absolutely correct. And to support this, Chris, there has been 2 former inspectors of ICAC, Inspector David Levine and Acting Inspector John Nicholson. Both have recommended an exoneration protocol into innocent victims such as myself. And also it was recommended in the Margaret Cunneen case. At the end of the day, the reports are there, the platform is there, the guidelines are there.
And they need to take responsibility for what one of their own agencies fails to prove. And they need to take responsibility for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean...
OK, let me ask about the United Nations. Sure. I'm no fan of the United Nations. However, what can it do? Does it make an approach to the federal government, to the state government, to both?
My understanding from the advice I have, Australia is a ratified signatory to the United Nations Human Rights Committee. That means it must follow the rules and the processes and afford its citizen the presumption of innocence, the rule of law. You're innocent until proven guilty. In my case, Australia now is being looked at for failing one of its citizens as such. What United Nations could do is ask the federal government, as I'm aware, to provide them an explanation and find a solution around this case. But I will not rest until I get justice.
You're a very brave and determined fella. It's good to have you in here, and I hope to keep in touch with you, and let's one day talk when you've got justice.
I hope so, and this is just not for me, Chris. I hope what I'm doing is for everyone else in Australia and in the state of New South Wales, so no one can ever be caught up in such a mess that me and my family were caught up in.
Well said. They should be very proud of you. Charif Kazal, thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much, Chris.